It all started on a rainy Wednesday afternoon in downtown Seattle. A popular podcast episode titled "Dating High-Maintenance Women, Is It Worth It?" went viral overnight. But not for the reasons its smug host had hoped. The real kicker? One of the men laughing casually on the couch, sipping his craft beer and rolling his eyes at women who can't live without eyelash extensions, was none other than Eli Carter, a name that didn't mean much to most listeners. Until a woman named Harper Vale commented just one sentence under the video. "This man once called me low effort while I was 7 months pregnant, building a fintech startup that now manages over $200 million. That was the match. What followed was a digital wildfire. Screenshots, receipts, photos from their wedding day, contrasting sharply with the glossy engagement photos Eli had just posted 2 weeks prior with his new fiancée, a self-proclaimed Instagram model and lifestyle coach named Brielle Ray. But before the public even had time to catch its breath, Harper Vale was already trending. Her name shot to the top of business blogs, women's forums, and every viral thread imaginable. Because Harper Vale wasn't just the ex-wife who got away. She was the woman Eli left behind thinking she was basic, when in fact, she had quietly become a self-made multimillionaire. And now, she was ready to talk. Let's rewind to how it all began. 3 years ago, Harper Vale was just another woman trying to hold it together. 31, pregnant and exhausted, she was juggling her 3rd trimester with pitching her app to cold investors who couldn't seem to look past her baby bump. She worked out of coffee shops, took Zoom meetings in leggings, and coded until her fingers cramped. She didn't have a glam squad or branded tote bags with her initials stitched in gold. She had one good laptop, a second-hand iPhone, and a desperate belief in her startup, ValePay, a fintech platform that would allow anonymous donors to directly fund emergency expenses for women in crisis. She also had Eli, or at least she thought she did. They'd been married for 4 years. He'd started as a bartender, working his way through grad school, then landed a cushy job at a mid-sized marketing agency in Belltown. Harper was the one who encouraged him to pursue his creative side, helped rewrite his resume, and even built a portfolio site for him. In public, they looked like the perfect grind-together, glow-together couple. But in private, it was different. Eli wasn't cruel, at least not at first. He was passive, dismissive, the kind of man who made you doubt your own instincts. "Are you really going to take that call right now?" he'd ask with a fake laugh. "You look a little frazzled." Or, "Why don't you take it easy for a while? You're pregnant. Do you really think this is the right time to launch a company?" She would nod, smile, bury the hurt, and then work through the night. He would be too tired to make dinner, too distracted to rub her feet, too absorbed in his latest ad campaign to remember their prenatal appointments. But she kept going, because Harper had a vision, one she could barely afford to chase. At 36 weeks pregnant, she was still pitching, still answering support tickets, still tweaking UI layouts with swollen fingers and swollen feet. And one Friday night, when she dragged herself home after an investor meeting and found Eli halfway through a bottle of bourbon, he finally snapped. "God, you're not even trying anymore," he muttered. She blinked at him, unsure if she heard right. "Trying?" she repeated, confused. "You used to care how you looked," he said, eyes hazy. "Now you're just always in sweats, hair in a bun. You're obsessed with this stupid app. You think it makes you some kind of girl boss?" She stood there silently, the ache in her back suddenly nothing compared to the sharp throb in her chest. "I didn't sign up for this, Harper, for you like this." That night she didn't cry, she just packed a small overnight bag and left. He didn't call. What Harper didn't know then was that Eli had already been seeing someone else, a woman from his gym, Brielle, young, loud, surgically enhanced, and endlessly selfie-ready. Brielle thought Eli was low-key brilliant, thought he deserved more attention, more admiration. She called Harper homely and one of those crunchy women who pretend to be too smart for Botox. When Harper gave birth alone 3 weeks later, Eli didn't show up, didn't send flowers, didn't call. And so she stopped expecting anything from anyone. Instead, she did what Eli never thought she could do without him. She scaled. Within 9 months, ValePay raised its first $1.2 million in funding. By the following year, it had grown 5x. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't update her Instagram or post interviews. She wore black tees and mom jeans, breastfed between product meetings, and made her first million in silence. Until now. Because now Eli was everywhere, flashing his new fiancée in fake motivational reels, mocking low-effort women on podcasts with titles like Red Flags in Relationships and Why Men Should Date Up. And Harper? She'd had enough. After Harper's comment went viral, her inbox exploded. Women from all over the world messaged her, some with screenshots, others just with words of awe and solidarity. But none were more interesting than the DM she received from an editor at Forbes Women. "We'd love to do a feature on you, the woman who built a fintech empire from her apartment floor while 8 months pregnant. Your story needs to be told." Harper didn't respond immediately. She sat with it. Because even though the world was just now discovering her, Harper Vale had already been building quietly for years. Every dollar she earned, every connection she made, every sleepless night she survived, it had been done with zero applause. Part of her liked it that way. But something about Eli calling Brielle high maintenance while painting her as some frumpy, forgotten ex-wife triggered something primal in her. Not because she needed validation, but because the truth mattered. The truth was that Harper wasn't low effort. She had sacrificed everything, comfort, sleep, pride, even love, to bring her vision to life. And now, she wasn't the woman Eli left behind. She was the woman he could never reach again. 3 years earlier, in the chaos of early motherhood, Harper had launched ValePay from a cramped one-bedroom apartment with a second-hand baby crib next to her desk. She didn't have a nanny, didn't have a PR team, just a breast pump and a bullet journal full of Post-it notes. The startup was born out of her own trauma. When she was 7 months pregnant, she had found herself standing outside a pharmacy trying to choose between prenatal vitamins and paying for an Uber home. Eli had forgotten to transfer money to their shared account again. That night, Harper broke down, but the next morning, she wrote her first pitch deck for ValePay. Her idea was simple. Let people donate directly to anonymous women in need, mothers escaping abuse, students facing eviction, single women choosing between groceries and childcare. Fast forward 2 years later, and ValePay had become the go-to platform for emergency funding. It was backed by several major impact investors and had just inked a partnership with the UN's Women's Initiative Fund. Yet Harper still lived simply. She wore the same faded denim jacket from college, ate leftover stir-fry 3 days a week, and when she met with investors, she made it a point to bring her toddler, Aiden, with her, not as a gimmick, but as a message. This is who I'm doing it for. When she finally agreed to the Forbes interview, the story took off like wildfire. From abandoned wife to fintech queen, the rise of Harper Vale. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion. Some called her the blueprint. Others said she was milking victimhood. Eli, he panicked. His phone was blowing up. His fiancée Brielle was losing her mind. Why is your ex-wife on the cover of Forbes, Eli? Why is everyone tagging me in memes? He tried to play it cool. She's just trying to stay relevant. But even his friends didn't believe him anymore, because the receipts were too loud. Screenshots of texts where he told Harper to act like a real wife went viral. An old Reddit thread resurfaced where someone anonymously detailed how a Seattle startup queen was married to a guy who mocked her work behind her back. And the final nail? A leaked video from a private dinner party showing Eli drunkenly saying, "She was never hot enough for me anyway. She was smart, but boring. You know? Basic." That clip? 14 million views in 24 hours. Meanwhile, Harper hadn't responded once. She was too busy finalizing a $30 million partnership with a European investment group and designing ValePay's next expansion into Latin America. She had no time to argue with a man who once forgot her birthday because he was busy watching the Seahawks game. But the internet wasn't done with him yet. Then came the gala, a black-tie charity event in downtown Seattle that Eli and Brielle had planned to attend for weeks. They saw it as a chance to rebrand, reclaim the narrative. Eli even prepared a short speech, something about moving on from toxic exes. But as the cameras flashed and guests sipped champagne, something shifted. The room quieted, the music dulled, and all eyes turned toward the entrance. Because standing there, glowing in an emerald silk gown that hugged every curve, was Harper Vale. She didn't come alone. On her arm was Cyrus Langston, a clean-cut, globally recognized CEO of a billion-dollar sustainability tech firm. Tall, elegant, and effortlessly powerful. Cyrus kissed Harper on the cheek as they walked in. Not performative. Intimate. Familiar. Eli turned pale. Brielle dropped her champagne, but Harper didn't even look their way. She mingled with guests, spoke to the mayor, gave a short speech about ValePay's new maternal health fund, then posed for photos that instantly went viral. Headlines the next morning were brutal. When you leave a low-effort woman and she shows up with a billionaire CEO. He called her basic, now she owns the room. Fintech queen makes ex regret everything at charity gala. Eli tried to do damage control, released a Notes app apology, tried to spin it into a growth story, but it was too late. He had underestimated the woman he once dismissed. The world saw Harper now, and for the first time she wasn't hiding. She was building, thriving, dominating, and Eli? He was just a footnote in her origin story. The days following the gala were a blur of headlines, phone calls, and email requests for interviews. Harper's phone buzzed non-stop. CNN wanted a feature. A TEDx organizer reached out for a keynote. Even Reese Witherspoon's production company sent a "just wondering if you'd consider a docuseries" email. Harper declined most of them. Not because she wasn't tempted, but because she knew attention was currency, and she'd cash it when she decided. Not when the internet wanted its next viral clapback queen. Instead, she focused on what mattered: her son, her team, and the next round of funding. But while Harper was busy expanding her empire, Eli was busy imploding. The gala disaster had cost him more than just his pride. A major client pulled out of a deal citing brand alignment concerns. His boss encouraged him to take a leave of absence. And Brielle? She went full meltdown. "You didn't tell me she was this powerful." She shrieked after seeing a photo of Harper and Cyrus in Vanity Fair. "You made it sound like she was just your sad little ex sold t-shirts online." "She was," Eli argued, pacing in his overpriced condo. "She used to be a mess. Always stressed, always working. She wasn't like this when we were together." "Maybe," Brielle snapped. "She just wasn't like this with you." It was a brutal truth, and Eli hated how much it echoed in his head after she slammed the door and walked out. Back in her corner office, overlooking Lake Union, Harper stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, her assistant reading out a list of brand deals and investor offers. Citigroup, Nike Women, and Bumble want to collaborate on a financial literacy campaign targeting single moms, her assistant said, barely keeping up. Also, Shonda Rhimes' team emailed again about the screenplay rights to your story. Harper didn't flinch. "Tell Shonda I'll take the meeting. She's the only one I'll consider." That night, after tucking Aiden into bed, Harper pulled out the last box from her closet. Inside were old journals, receipts, baby shower invites from people who had ghosted her after the divorce, even a photo of her and Eli at their wedding. Young, smiling, completely blind. She looked at that girl and whispered, "You didn't deserve what he did to you. But you built something he never could." She lit a single candle, dropped the photo in a silver tray, and let the flame eat it whole. It wasn't rage. It was release. The next morning, her legal team sent Eli a notice. Effective immediately, Harper was revoking his equity in ValePay. Wait, he had equity? Yes, because 3 years ago, when she was still hopeful, still trying to build her dream while carrying his child, she'd given him 5% on paper. "For supporting me," she'd said. "For believing in us." He hadn't believed in her. Not really, but she had still wanted him to win with her. Now, he was out, and she wasn't asking. She was informing. Eli freaked out, called, texted, left long-winded voicemails. "I didn't know you were serious. I didn't know it'd become this big. Please, Harper, be reasonable." She sent back one sentence. "You gave me silence when I needed support. You gave me mockery when I needed partnership. Now I give you nothing." It shut him up for good. Meanwhile, Cyrus Langston, the billionaire CEO who walked her into that gala, wasn't just arm candy. They met 2 years earlier at a UN tech conference where Harper spoke on decentralized funding for crisis zones. Cyrus had introduced himself after her panel, intrigued by her poise and how she dismantled a Harvard economist's condescension in 5 sharp sentences. They exchanged numbers, texted occasionally. Then 6 months ago, she invited him to advise ValePay on a global expansion strategy. Their bond was built slowly, intentionally. No forced flirtation, no performative charm, just two highly intelligent people who respected the hell out of each other. The chemistry grew from that. And now, Cyrus had made it clear he wanted more. But Harper hesitated, not because she didn't trust him, but because she'd built so much of her identity on independence, on not needing anyone again. Still, there was something different about him. He never asked her to shrink, never asked her to soften. He saw her fire and fed it. "You don't intimidate me," he told her once over dinner. "You inspire me." She hadn't blushed in years, but that night she did. At the Women in Tech Summit 2 weeks later, Harper was invited as the closing speaker. The ballroom held over 3,000 people, cameras, press, students, investors, all waiting to hear from the woman who'd built an empire in silence, then walked into the spotlight like she owned it. She took the stage in a tailored black power suit, heels clicking like a metronome of purpose. Her speech didn't mention Eli, not once. Instead, she said, "I've been called basic, low effort, unremarkable. I've had partners say I wasn't enough, that I should focus on being a wife, a mother, that my ideas were cute but unrealistic. I've cried while coding. I've pitched with a baby on my hip. I've lost everything, then rebuilt it with less. But I never needed to scream back. I let the work speak." She paused. Success isn't revenge. It's clarity, it's peace, and it's power used for good. Standing ovation. As she walked off stage, her phone buzzed. Aiden's preschool sent a photo, him holding a crayon drawing titled "Mom is a Boss." She smiled. He was right. The morning after Harper's viral summit speech, an email hit her inbox with the subject line, "Private Invitation, Davos 2025. She stared at it for a moment. The World Economic Forum. The kind of invitation that only found its way to Fortune 500 CEOs, prime ministers, and economic changemakers. And now, Harper Vale. The girl Eli once called a distracted hobbyist. The woman he left behind because she lacked vision. Now being invited to one of the most exclusive gatherings of power on the planet. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the weight of it all. Not long ago, she'd been balancing diapers and datasets, breastfeeding while debugging app crashes, crying into her pillow when Eli ghosted her for hours, always blaming work dinners that smelled like someone else's perfume. But now, the world had shifted. She wasn't reacting anymore. She was leading. In another corner of Seattle, Eli was struggling to adjust to irrelevance. After the gala, his reputation tanked. His followers dropped by the thousands. A Twitter thread titled, "How to Spot a Man Who Can't Handle a Powerful Woman, a Case Study, Eli Carter," hit 2 million likes. Brielle left him 2 weeks later. She posted a reel crying in soft lighting with a caption that read, "Sometimes the glow-up is realizing who was never rooting for you." Eli tried to spin it, calling into a podcast to defend himself. "She's not even that successful," he claimed. "She got lucky with timing and pity funding. No real man wants a woman who acts like she's the CEO of everything." That clip was instantly clipped, memed, and slammed across every platform. The comments were ruthless. "No real man? Bro, she pulled a billionaire CEO. He said pity funding while jobless in his kitchen. Imagine being this bitter while she's literally keynoting summits." Eli shut down all his social media. But the internet never forgets. Harper, meanwhile, was thriving. Her team had grown from a 5-person garage crew to a global operation with offices in New York, Nairobi, and Berlin. ValePay had just launched a micro-loan platform for refugee women, giving them access to funds without banks or bureaucracy. And guess who came knocking? Goldman Sachs, Apple Pay, even the White House. She had meetings on meetings, all the while, never once forgetting the early days when she was cold pitching from her kitchen table with spit up on her shirt and no support system. That pain had become her armor, her blueprint, her fire. She didn't hate Eli. She pitied him, because he walked away from the very thing he claimed to want, a smart, loyal, future-focused partner. But Harper wasn't interested in revenge arcs. She was interested in impact. Still, there was one chapter she hadn't closed. Aiden's birthday was coming up. He was turning 3, and she decided for the first time to let Eli attend, under supervision, of course. She didn't do it for Eli. She did it for Aiden. He deserved to see that his mom had nothing to hide, and that she wasn't afraid of the man who once discarded her. The birthday party was held in a sunny backyard, filled with laughter, bubbles, homemade cupcakes, and kids running wild. Eli showed up late, wearing expensive sunglasses. holding a toy that still had the price tag on it. He looked around awkwardly, like a man who no longer belonged in the world he helped fracture. Harper spotted him and offered a polite nod. He walked over slowly. "You look different," he said, as if shocked by the power in her presence, her posture, the easy grace she moved with. "I am different," she replied simply. He shifted uncomfortably. "I saw the Davos invite. Congrats." "Thank you. Listen, I know I messed up. A lot. I didn't see what you were building, what you were becoming." She didn't flinch, didn't offer comfort, only truth. "You didn't want to see it, because it made you feel small." He swallowed hard. "You know," he added quietly, "Brielle said something before she left. She said I was scared of any woman who didn't need me." Harper finally looked him in the eyes. "I wasn't trying to not need you, Eli. I just couldn't afford to stop needing myself." Then she walked away. Back to the guests, back to Aiden, back to the life she built. Eli stayed 10 more minutes, then left. Quietly, no scene, no hugs, just faded into the background, exactly where he belonged. Later that night, Harper tucked Aiden into bed, then opened a package left at her doorstep. It was from Cyrus. Inside, a handwritten note. "You're not just the future of fintech, you're the future, period. Proud of you always." And beneath it, a silver bracelet engraved with 3 words, "Build, bloom, belong." She smiled. The girl who once begged a man to see her potential no longer needed anyone's permission. Because Harper Vale wasn't just building an empire. She was becoming one. The week after Aiden's birthday, Harper made a decision she'd been quietly considering for months. She called her publicist and said, "It's time. Let's go on record. I want to tell my version. Fully." There had been hundreds of think pieces, millions of comments, countless assumptions about who Harper was and what she had endured. Most of them close, some wildly off. But none of them came from her mouth. That was about to change. She chose Bloom Magazine, a publication built by women, for women, unapologetically focused on female ambition and resilience. No tabloid drama, no clickbait spin, just truth. The interview took place in Harper's new Seattle headquarters. Minimalist interiors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a kids' play area inside the main lounge. Her idea. She wore no makeup, just a crisp white button-down, simple black jeans, and a chain necklace that read "Self-Made." When the journalist asked, "Why now?" Harper leaned forward. "Because silence protected me once. But now, it protects him. And I'm done shielding anyone who discarded me like I was disposable." She talked about building Vale Pay while pregnant and unemployed, about taking investor calls while Aiden cried in the background, about the shame of being told by her own husband that she was a drain, not a dreamer. She described the night Eli came home drunk, muttering under his breath that real women support their men, after she had just closed a deal worth $50,000, and how, 3 days later, he packed a bag and said he needed space to think. He moved out, moved on, and moved Brielle in. The journalist paused. "Did you ever think of giving up?" Harper smiled faintly. "Every single day, and every single day I reminded myself, if I don't believe in me, no one else will." The article dropped on a Tuesday. By noon, it had 3.2 million reads. The headline, "She wasn't low effort, she was launching a legacy." The cover photo showed Harper standing with Aiden in one hand and her MacBook in the other, framed by a wall of investor plaques. The internet exploded, again. But this time, it wasn't just praise, it was alignment. Thousands of women replied with their own stories. Screenshots of text messages from exes who called them too much, too smart, too independent. Posts that read, "Harper made me remember who I am." And the biggest shock of all? Eli resurfaced. Not on social media, not in a podcast, but in Harper's inbox. The email was short, subject, "I was wrong," from Eli Carter to Harper Vale. "Harper, I read the article. I don't expect forgiveness or a reply, but I want you to know. I saw the empire. I just didn't think you'd build it without me. I was wrong." She stared at it for a long time. Then archived it. No response. Because some stories don't need sequels. They need closure. In the months that followed, Harper expanded Vale Pay into 3 new countries. She joined the board of a venture fund aimed at backing startups led by young single moms. She and Cyrus grew closer, but on her terms. No rush, no pressure. One night he invited her to his retreat in Iceland. Snow-covered mountains, silence so pure it echoed. They sat by a fire, sipping tea. He asked gently, "Do you ever think about what your life could have been if Eli had supported you?" She looked out the window, then answered, "I do." And then I remind myself, if he had supported me, I might have stayed small. I would have been a sidekick in my own story. Cyrus smiled. "And now?" She turned to him. "I own the whole damn script." Back home, Aiden started preschool. On his first day, he handed the teacher a crayon drawing labeled "My Mommy's Office." It showed a tall glass building, a crown on top, and a stick figure with wild hair standing at the center. The teacher smiled. "And what does your mommy do?" Aiden didn't hesitate. "She bosses." Harper laughed when she heard about it later. But deep down, it hit her hard. Because that's how her son saw her. Not as abandoned, not as bitter, but as strong, secure, standing. Harper Vale was no longer the wife who was left. She was the woman no one saw coming. The one who didn't post revenge selfies or subtweet her trauma. She just built. And in building, she reclaimed everything that had been taken from her. Respect, autonomy, and the belief that her worth was never defined by the man who couldn't handle her power. She didn't break. She bloomed. And when the world finally watched her rise, she didn't say "I told you so." She just smiled and kept rising. 6 months after the Bloom interview, Harper Vale's name was no longer just trending in tech circles. She was now a global force. Her face appeared on the cover of Time magazine, under the headline, "The Quiet Queen: How Harper Vale is Reshaping Global Finance and Doing It Her Way." She wasn't just a symbol anymore. She was a blueprint. ValePay had grown beyond anything she imagined in that cramped apartment with a colicky baby and a broken heart. Now it operated in over 22 countries, with emergency funding hubs in India, Nigeria, and Colombia. She'd built something bigger than profit. She'd built a safety net for women like her. Forgotten women, overlooked mothers, women who'd been left, underestimated, gaslit, and pushed to the edge. Now she made sure no woman ever had to choose between diapers and rent again. Her team had also grown. Dozens of coders, policy experts, financial analysts, all handpicked not for their resumes, but for their mission. At the center of it all stood Harper. No longer the tired woman in oversized sweatpants and silent grief. She wore bold colors now, spoke in boardrooms like she owned the walls, because she did. And Cyrus, still there, still calm, still steady, still choosing her without making her need to be chosen. But Harper was taking her time. She didn't rush into new titles, didn't label their love, because she'd spent too long being defined by someone else's timeline. Now, everything moved on hers. Then came the speaking tour. London, Singapore, Johannesburg, São Paulo. Each stop was a sold-out theater of women, and some men hanging on her every word. She didn't bring a stylist, didn't rehearse with a speechwriter. She spoke raw, real. One night in New York City, she stood in front of 5,000 people and said, "There was a time when I measured my worth by how much one man saw in me. Then I remembered, I was never the mirror, I was the light." The crowd stood before she even finished the sentence. She'd gone from rejected wife to global movement. And yet, Eli still watched. From afar, his name had all but vanished from the startup scene. His agency folded. Brielle sued him for breach of a joint brand contract. His landlord sued him next. He was broke, bitter, and quietly, obsessively, tracking Harper's success like it was a sport. Some nights he'd watch her interviews on mute, read her quotes like they were daggers. He'd rewatch the old video clip of himself from that cursed podcast, the one where he said, "Real women don't come with startup pitches." The regret ate him alive, and it was too late for redemption. The world had chosen its queen, and he was no longer in her court. But Harper? She didn't gloat, didn't take subtle jabs, didn't post cryptic captions or "look at me now" throwbacks. She stayed building, because the empire was bigger than the pain, bigger than proving anything. Now, it was about legacy. And that legacy got its biggest moment yet, when the United Nations called. They invited her to keynote the World Economic Inclusion Forum. The invite read, "To Miss Harper Vale, founder of ValePay, pioneer in financial equity, voice of the voiceless." She cried when she read it. Not because it was her biggest stage, but because it was one her younger self would have needed to believe she could reach. On the day of the speech, she wore a dark green pantsuit, the exact color of the blanket she had wrapped around her shoulders the night Eli kicked her out. She stood on that stage, thousands of delegates watching, and said, "3 years ago, I was a statistic. A pregnant woman left behind. Now I am proof that women do not break when abandoned. We build, quietly, powerfully, and when we return as empires. The applause thundered. Some delegates stood in tears, and backstage, Cyrus stood too, watching her with pride in his eyes. Not because she needed him, but because she chose him. And that choice was everything. Later that night, Harper walked alone through the hotel garden, phone off, hair loose, no guards, no entourage, just a woman who'd made it to the mountaintop. She sat on a bench and stared up at the stars, then whispered, "I forgive you, Eli. Not for you, but because I'm finally too high above to carry your weight." The wind shifted. She exhaled. And somewhere across the world, another woman in a tiny apartment opened ValePay on her cracked phone screen and saw an approval message. Funds on the way. From an empire built by a woman who refused to disappear. By the time Harper returned to Seattle after her UN keynote, her inbox was flooded again. This time, not with praise, but with offers. Book deals, TV rights, biopics. Even Beyoncé's Parkwood Entertainment had sent a discreet message, "We'd love to talk." But Harper didn't rush into any of it, because there was something bigger stirring behind the scenes. Something she had never shared publicly. Something that could shift everything. Again, it was time to reveal a truth she had guarded like a diamond in her chest. A secret that wasn't just personal. It was strategic. 3 years ago, before she launched ValePay, before Eli left, before she even showed the first version of the app to investors, Harper had made one private move no one knew about. She'd registered 2 other companies under anonymous shell firms. One in Zurich, one in Singapore. These were not fintech startups, they were holding companies. And over the years, while the world focused on ValePay, Harper had quietly been funneling her speaking fees, stock equity, brand royalties, and early crypto investments into those entities. Why? Because she didn't just want to build a business. She wanted to own her independence, permanently. Eli had once controlled the rent, the utilities, the bank passwords. She had vowed to never again let a man or the media own her financial narrative. And now, those 2 companies held assets worth over $72 million. That didn't include ValePay, didn't include her real estate, didn't include her licensing contracts. Harper Vale wasn't just successful. She was already richer than most male CEOs who'd once laughed at her. And no one knew. Until now. She called a meeting with her legal team. "I'm ready to consolidate the assets," she said. Her lawyer blinked. "Publicly?" Harper nodded. It's time the world saw the full picture. The press release dropped 1 week later. It read, "Harper Vale establishes the Vale Foundation with $100 million endowment to support women's access to capital." News outlets exploded. CNBC, Bloomberg, Fortune, MSNBC. Every reporter scrambled to understand how she had amassed that kind of wealth. And the answer? "I did it the way women always have to. Silently, strategically, while being underestimated." That quote was everywhere. On tote bags, on murals, on coffee mugs. And for the first time, the financial world realized Harper wasn't just a disruptor, she was a dominator. Eli saw the news in a cafe, alone, still jobless, still bitter. He read the headline 3 times, then checked his phone. Nothing from Harper. No call. No, "Look at me now." Just silence. Because she didn't need him to see it, she expected him to. And he did. The man who once asked her to stay in her lane had just watched her build the highway. Later that month, Harper gave her first television interview in over a year. She sat across from a well-known journalist who asked, was it always about proving him wrong? Harper didn't flinch. No, it was about proving myself right. The journalist pressed, "Do you think you've inspired other women to leave bad relationships?" Harper smiled. "I hope I've inspired them to leave limiting beliefs, whether that's a man, a job, or a version of themselves that was built for survival, not success." The clip went viral, but what followed was even more powerful. Tens of thousands of women began tagging ValePay in posts titled Empire Phase. It became a movement, a mindset, an anthem. Women everywhere posting screenshots of resignations, business licenses, therapy breakthroughs, new homes, passport stamps, every single one captioned, "Ex said I was too emotional. Meanwhile, boss said I wasn't leadership material. Meanwhile, friend said I was dreaming too big. Meanwhile." The energy was unmistakable. Harper hadn't just built a company, she had built a culture. That weekend, Cyrus took her to a private retreat in the San Juan Islands. No staff, no PR, just nature, quiet, and space to breathe. They sat on a porch at sunrise, coffee in hand, blankets over their knees. He turned to her. You know, I've loved powerful women before, but none like you. Harper raised an eyebrow. Why? Because you don't just wear your power, you teach it. She looked out over the horizon. That's the only kind that lasts. Then he took her hand. There was no ring, no proposal. Just the weight of something deeper than titles. He knew she didn't need saving. She only ever needed space to rise, and he was happy to make room. That night, Harper wrote in her private journal. A single line. Empires don't announce themselves. They arrive when they're undeniable. She closed the book, then went to sleep, knowing she had become exactly that. The morning after her foundation launch, Harper woke up to a handwritten letter on her doorstep. No sender, just her name, written in shaky cursive on cream stationery. She opened it slowly, expecting another fan letter or investor pitch, but the first line stopped her breath. I was wrong every day of our marriage, and I'm finally ready to say it to your face. It was from Eli. Not an email, not a DM, a real letter, delivered by hand. He wanted to meet, not to argue, not to plead. But as he wrote, to finally face the woman I once tried to silence. She read it twice, then set it down beside her coffee cup. She didn't cry, she didn't rage. She considered. Not for him. For her. Closure wasn't something she owed anyone, but maybe, just maybe, it was something she deserved on her own terms. So she sent a simple text. 1 hour. Café Solstice, don't be late. Café Solstice had once been their Sunday ritual. Now, it was a neutral battlefield. Harper walked in wearing all black, no makeup, no entourage, just power wrapped in calm. Eli was already there. Thinner, paler, humbled. When he saw her, he stood, awkwardly. Harper, he said. She sat down without a word. He swallowed hard. You look unstoppable. I am, she replied. The silence between them stretched for a full minute. Then he spoke. I used to think you were obsessed with control, that you were trying to be the man in the marriage. She didn't blink. I know. But I realize now, you weren't trying to dominate me. You were trying to survive. He leaned in, eyes earnest. I thought success was about being the loudest in the room. You showed me it's about building something so solid, it speaks without a word. He paused. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Truly. You were never the problem, I was. Harper nodded slowly. I accept your apology, she said softly. Then looked him dead in the eye. But I will never forget how small you made me feel for dreaming bigger than your comfort zone. He dropped his gaze, and that was when she stood. That girl you walked away from? She died the night you closed the door. I'm not her. I'm the woman who rose from her ashes. She turned to leave, then added one final sentence. And you don't get to know her. She didn't look back, because women like Harper don't need final scenes. They create new acts. Outside the cafe, paparazzi were waiting. Somehow, the meetup had leaked. Flashes went off. Harper, was that your ex-husband? Are you two getting back together? Is forgiveness the next phase of your empire? She turned, smiled politely, and said only one line. Forgiveness is free, but access, that's earned. Then got in her car and disappeared. That evening, Harper hosted a private dinner at her penthouse. Just her core team, Cyrus, and a few close allies. They toasted to the Val Foundation's launch, to 500,000 women funded, to 23 countries impacted, to a woman who once coded in the dark while her baby cried, now being named most influential woman in global finance. After dessert, Cyrus stood and clinked his glass. There's something I've wanted to say for a long time, he said, looking only at her. You taught me that love isn't about saving someone. It's about watching them build and never standing in the way. Then he pulled a small box from his pocket, not a ring, a key to your next home, our next chapter, wherever you choose to go. Harper took it, held it, and said, I'll choose when I'm ready. He nodded. No pressure, no ego, just room. Room for a woman to rise again and again on her own timeline. Later, standing alone on her balcony, city lights glittering below her like applause, Harper whispered to herself. He said I was low effort. She smiled. Meanwhile, I built an empire. And the world was only beginning to see what she'd do next. The gala was packed. Floor-length gowns, diamond watches, billionaires, celebrities, CEOs, power brokers. It was the event of the year, the annual Global Impact Honors in New York City, hosted at the historic Armitage Hall. And this time, the main honoree wasn't a politician or a Silicon Valley veteran. It was Harper Vale. founder of Veil Pay, architect of the Veil Foundation, the woman who went from abandoned to untouchable. She had turned down this award twice before, not because she wasn't grateful, but because she wasn't ready. Now, she was. But she didn't come to celebrate herself. She came to deliver a message. Harper arrived in silence. No press tour, no interviews. She stepped out of a matte black car, dressed in a structured navy gown, minimal jewelry, hair slicked back. The look said, "I'm not here to impress. I'm here to define the moment." Flashes lit up the marble entrance as she walked in, Cyrus by her side, dashing but quiet. He knew what this night meant. He knew it wasn't about the trophy, it was about the truth. As dinner plates were cleared and the host took the stage, the room buzzed with anticipation. Finally, the announcement came. Please welcome to the stage, the 2025 Global Impact honoree, Harper Veil. Thunderous applause. Everyone stood. She walked slowly, deliberately, and then she began. 3 years ago, she said, her voice firm, I gave birth alone in a small hospital room with no partner, no plan, and no money in my checking account. The room fell silent. I had been left behind by the man who once promised me the world, and I had a choice. Fade quietly into a life I never wanted, or fight like hell for the one I knew I deserved. She paused, scanning the crowd. I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a safety net. What I did have was a baby in one arm and a startup in the other. And I knew if I dropped either, the world would never forgive me. A few in the crowd wiped tears. I was called low effort, too emotional, too ambitious, too quiet, too loud, too much, not enough. She leaned forward, and while they labeled me, I built quietly. While they mocked me, I scaled. While they moved on, I moved up. The applause was building again, but she wasn't done. I didn't come here to flex. I came here to warn. The audience froze. There are thousands of women just like me right now, being left behind, being told they're not enough, being underestimated by partners, employers, even family. Her voice sharpened. To the world that laughed at us, keep laughing. We'll be over here building nations out of the ashes you left us in. The crowd erupted, but she raised one hand. Silence fell again. I dedicate this award not to my past, but to your future. Because your future? It looks a lot like me. Then she stepped back. Applause, not polite applause, roaring, reverberating, uncontainable. Even the critics stood, because they had no choice. Harper Veil didn't just own the stage, she owned the narrative. That night, social media melted. Clips of her speech were posted within seconds. One tweet hit 6 million likes in 4 hours. She wasn't angry, she was precise. She was the storm in heels. Hashtags flooded the feed. Harper effect, built not begged. Meanwhile she built an empire, he said, low effort. Eli, he saw it all. Alone in a dim apartment, scrolling until 3 a.m. He watched her speech 5 times. He knew now he would never recover from letting her go. And that wasn't her burden to carry. Back at her penthouse, Harper removed her heels, set the award on the windowsill, and poured herself a glass of wine. Cyrus walked in, silent as always. He kissed her forehead. No words, just presence. She looked out at the skyline, towers glowing, streets humming, the city alive beneath her. Then whispered to herself, the louder they doubted me, the quieter I built. She raised her glass, to the women they thought would disappear, and took a sip. The morning after the gala, Harper woke up to sunlight pouring into her room. The city felt quiet, like even the noise had paused to acknowledge something had shifted. She stepped out onto the balcony, barefoot, hair still tousled from the night before, award statue quietly gleaming inside on her dresser. But she wasn't thinking about the speeches, the applause, or even the headlines that now screamed. Harper Veil didn't just take the stage, she redefined it. No. She was thinking about the girl she used to be. The one who cried alone in a bathroom after being told she was wasting her potential on dreams. The one who made formula from samples because she couldn't afford the big can. The one who Googled how to survive divorce when pregnant at 2 a.m. Harper Veil had built an empire. But the girl inside her? She had survived the wreckage. And that deserved something more than applause. It deserved honor. Later that afternoon, Harper posted something rare. A personal note on her official Veil Pay page. No hashtags, no filters, just truth. To every woman who's ever been underestimated, they didn't break you. They revealed you. And now that you've seen what you can survive, build something so powerful, they can never touch you again. Harper. The post went viral in minutes, But it wasn't just viral, it was personal. A woman in Brazil wrote, "I left my abuser and started a candle business after watching Harper speak." A single mom in Detroit, "Because of veil pay, I didn't have to choose between rent and groceries this month." A student in India, "She made me believe I could code even if no one else believed in me." Harper didn't repost them. She read them and wept. Not because she was sad, but because she was seen, and now, so were they. That evening she met Cyrus on the rooftop of a quiet jazz club. No photographers, no scripts. He brought 2 glasses and a question. "So what's next?" she smiled. "For the empire?" He nodded. She looked out over the horizon, then replied, "We franchise the power. I'm not here to be the exception. I'm here to open the floodgates." And with that, she shared her next move. A global initiative to train 10,000 female-led fintech founders. Not in theory, but in equity. Funded, backed, trained, each one receiving what Harper never had, belief at the beginning. Cyrus leaned back and laughed softly. "You're dangerous in the best way." She raised her glass. "Dangerous to who?" He clinked her glass gently. "To anyone who ever doubted you." A week later, Harper received an invitation to speak at Harvard Business School. This time, not as a guest, as a case study. Her journey would be taught under Resilient Leadership in Modern Markets, the Harper Veil Method. She smiled when she read it, not for pride, but for proof. Proof that being underestimated wasn't a curse, it was camouflage. And then came the moment no one expected. At the official launch of the Veil Global Initiative, surrounded by press, team members, and young founders, Harper stood at the podium with one final story to tell. She took a breath, then said, "There's one thing I've never shared until now." The room leaned in. "When I was at my lowest, broke, pregnant, alone, I didn't believe in an empire. I barely believed in myself. What I did believe was that no one was coming to save me. So I became the person I was waiting for." She looked out across the crowd, tears, smiles, fists clenched in silent pride. And now, if you've ever felt invisible, remember this. You don't have to yell to be heard. You don't have to rage to rise. You just have to build until they can't look away. The room rose to its feet, not out of habit, but because the world had seen her now, fully, completely. Harper Veil was no longer the abandoned wife. She was the empire, and every woman she lifted was proof that power didn't have to come from pain. But sometimes, it did, and that didn't make her broken. It made her undeniable. So the story has ended, our wonderful friends. Are you still here until now? If you are, then something about Harper's journey touched your heart in a way that's hard to explain, but impossible to ignore. Maybe it's because you've been there. Maybe it's because you're still there, quietly building in the shadows, waiting for someone, anyone to notice. But listen carefully. Your worth is not determined by who sees it. Harper Veil taught us something profound, that being underestimated is not the end. It's often just the beginning. There's a moment in the story where she says, "I wasn't trying to not need you. I just couldn't afford to stop needing myself." That's not just a quote. That's a blueprint. For every woman who's been left dismissed, told to be quiet, told she's too much, this is your sign to stop asking for permission. You don't need their applause. You need your own belief. And maybe that's why you're still watching, still listening. Because somewhere inside, there's a voice saying, "I could build something too." And you can. You will. Let Harper's story remind you that healing doesn't always come from revenge or recognition. It comes from reclaiming your space in the world, one step at a time. As the writer Heterodoxism once wrote, "You do not heal by returning to what broke you. You heal by choosing the version of yourself they could never control." So if you've ever been called low effort, too emotional, or simply not enough, remember this. You're not broken. You're becoming. If this story moved you, share it, like it, subscribe to the channel, because someone else out there needs to hear what you just did. Maybe your friend, your sister, maybe even your past self. And as we close this chapter, I'll leave you with one last truth. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to build until they can't look away. We see you, and the world will too.